Welcome to the Korea Society and welcome to Studio Korea. My name is Nikita Desai, Director of Policy and Corporate Programs here at the Korea Society. I'm delighted to welcome members of the business community, members of the media here to our corporate program today, Korus FTA at 2 years with Tami Overby.
Thank you.
Welcome, Tami. Tami became Vice President for Asia at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in July 2009. She's responsible for developing, promoting, and executing programs and policies relating to U.S. trade and investment in Asia. She works closely with Chamber member companies, business coalitions, AmChams, government leaders, and business executives to achieve their business objectives in this very important part of the world. Tami and her team led the efforts for the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement ratification, and we're very happy to have her here to discuss the Korus FTA on its 2-year anniversary. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Tami, how would you judge the Korus FTA on its 2-year anniversary?
Well, I think it's off to a very good start, Nikita. There have been a lot of press articles this week that have been quite critical of the numbers. U.S. exports to South Korea are down, but I think it's misleading to look at only one number and to judge an entire agreement that way. I think one needs to step back, and in my case, I would step back to 1988 when I first moved to Seoul to work in South Korea. At that time, the U.S. business community view of the Korean business environment was it was the most difficult place to do business in Asia. And went fast forward to 2009, after we finished the Korus FTA, but not yet ratified, and American companies were saying it is one of the best places to do business in Asia. And now that we have the Korus Free Trade Agreement, 2 years into its implementation, I think it's off to a very good start. The trade relationship between the United States and South Korea is massive. One good data point you can look at is before the Korus FTA was implemented, South Korea was America's 7th largest trade partner. I am delighted to say today, South Korea is number 6. It's moved up. So trade is up between our countries. We shouldn't just look at exporting goods. We also need to look at services. The U.S., we're very strong in services, and we've had a services surplus for the last 2 years of almost 20%. And when we look at the export numbers being down a little bit, I think we also have to look at the fact that one of the primary goods that we exported to Korea was corn. And in 2012, America suffered a very difficult drought. So our supply of corn to be able to export went down significantly. Also, Korea's energy mix has changed. And both of those factors have nothing to do with the Korus FTA. So I think when I read some of the media saying, or some of the people saying that Korus is a failure, I could not disagree more strongly. I think what Korus does do is it creates a structure for us to do business. Not only does it, in 3 years' time, 95% of all goods and services, or manufactured goods and agriculture goods will be entering Korea duty-free. So the tariffs have gone to 0 within 3 years. That's going to make American products much more competitive. We're already seeing big surpluses in American goods covered under the FTA. So wine, dairy, nuts, many products there is a surplus. So we're doing well in the goods covered under the Korus FTA today. We will continue to do, I believe, better and better. But the other thing the FTA does is the structure that it creates, it allows for dispute resolution mechanisms. So when we do have problems, we now have 19 different committees set up under the Korea FTA that are administered by USTR and the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy, MOTI. They oversee these committees. There's an auto committee, there's a financial services committee. So they have different committees to look at different issues. So when we do have problems, And in a relationship this massive, of course, there are going to be a few problems. We're able to very easily address them. I also want to give a huge thank you and recognition to the South Korean government. Ambassador An Ho-young and the team at the embassy in Washington have been very responsive as these issues have arisen. So we have seen problems come up, problems be resolved. Now, one of the issues I did want to mention is in the auto sector. And for those of you who followed the Korus negotiation may remember that the U.S. auto industry was not a big supporter of the Korus FTA in the early days. But at the last moment, at the end of the last negotiation, the U.S. auto industry became a big supporter. In fact, Ford Motor Company even brought the United Auto Workers Union, the UAW. They endorsed the Korus FTA. To my knowledge, that's the first time the UAW has ever supported a free trade agreement. So the expectations of the U.S. auto industry were very high. And I should point out that the auto numbers, U.S. auto trade to South Korea is doing very well. Over the last 2 years, it's up over 100%. But we do have some challenges. Those challenges are in the area of regulatory barriers. In Seoul, along the street, you have a children's game called Whack-A-Mole. It's a little machine you drop 500 won into, and you have a big hammer, and a little mole pops up, and you hit the mole. Then another one pops up over here. You hit him. As soon as he goes down, another one pops up. We use that phrase, whack-a-mole, to describe some of the challenges we face in the auto sector. As soon as we knock down one non-tariff barrier in autos, a new one pops up. So that has been a challenge. But the sales are continuing to rise. But our companies expect, and we very much hope that we will be able to get some predictability in the market, some market certainty to know that we will be able to export our vehicles to Korea without all of these expensive barriers. Because every time one of these barriers pops up, we have to spend a lot of time and money trying to resolve it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for that very broad understanding of the status of the Korus at this time. I wanted to ask you, you talked a little bit about success stories and some challenges. What are some examples of some success stories that have emerged since implementation? Have there been some success stories between the first and the second year, for instance?
Sure. We have a small company called Profile Products. They make a green slurry material that goes on roadsides for construction, as you will have a grass area. It goes on golf courses. It goes on baseball fields. And we were speaking with Profile Products recently, and their numbers are significantly up in Korea because the tariff on that product went down dramatically, and that product becomes more competitive. So they are seeing their sales increase. We have another company out of Schaumburg, Illinois called Quality Float Works. They make large industrial floats that are used in some of the manufacturing processes in Korea. The tariff on their product went down significantly, and they are seeing a rise in their sales. So there are many real success stories, and I believe we're just getting started. Again, Korea has made a dramatic shift in their economy. When we think back on President Roh Moo-hyun, who was the president who launched the Korus FTA, he was really a visionary. He wanted to use the free trade agreement to really help open up Korea. He wanted to make Korea more competitive for the future, and he wanted to update and modernize the economy. So from Roh Moo-hyun to Lee Myung-bak, and someone that I consider really the father of Korus, in my mind, is Han Duck-soo. As you may remember, he was former trade minister, former finance minister, former prime minister, and most recently, his last assignment in the United States was as Korea's ambassador here. And I was honored to travel around the United States. I believe together with our partners, we took Ambassador Han to 38 states, something like 62 cities. And in all of these trips, he would talk to American business groups about the benefits of the Korus FTA. And many times the reporters in the audience would ask him, Mr. Ambassador, it looks like Korea has to do a lot of changing, but America doesn't have to change so much. Why would Korea want to do that? And the ambassador was always so eloquent, and he said, you're absolutely right. American market is already open, so the U.S. didn't have to change a lot. But the Korean market was mostly closed, so it was going to require a lot of changes, difficult, hard changes that we're seeing now. But he said the reason Korea wanted to do that, it really was about future competitiveness. As my Korean friends know, Korea is a small geographic country, roughly the size of the state of Indiana. Many of my Korean friends say it's a shrimp among minnows. A shrimp among whales. You are surrounded by Japan, the second largest economy in the world, China. I think Korea had to do something to set themselves apart. And if we look in Asia, America only has 3 free trade agreements. We have Singapore, we have Australia, and then we have our gold standard. The highest quality free trade agreement America has is with South Korea. And what this has done is it has really piqued interest from American companies about doing business in Seoul. And not just American companies. As soon as we finished the U.S. FTA, our European friends were knocking on Seoul's door saying they wanted to do an FTA. So right now, South Korea has more high-quality free trade agreements than anybody else in Asia. So when people ask me, and again, I'm responsible for American business in Asia for the U.S. Chamber, when they ask where should we invest in Asia, I tell them, well, Asia's a big place, but I would start with South Korea. They have a high-quality FTA. Now, it isn't perfect. We're not finished yet. We have room for improvement, but I would suggest that we're trending in a very positive direction.
You mentioned earlier some of the regulatory challenges that the FTA has. What are some other challenges? You just mentioned there's definitely room for growth and there are some obstacles ahead. What do you see as some of those obstacles that we'll have to overcome?
Well, one is an area that governments all over the world are looking at, but the first free trade agreement that the U.S. ever addressed it in was with South Korea, cross-border data flow. We now have this new technology, this cloud thing, and how are we going to regulate that? We have to protect your privacy. The governments need to have security. So we have to be reasonable about that. That topic I'm spending a lot of time discussing with the TPP partners, the other 11 countries that are working on TPP. The chief negotiator from Singapore said, well, I think data movement, that's a good thing, but I think you should store the data in Singapore. And then her colleague from Australia said, well, I think we should store it in Australia. And I said, well, I raised my hand and said, I have a question. Singapore, today, you are a data center. Many of our companies host their data in Singapore, and they move it there from other parts of the region. If Singapore decides to require data to be stored locally, everyone else will. And if everyone else will, Singapore will lose that ability to become a data center. Australia, you're investing billions of dollars in a national broadband network. You hope to be able to export data services, but if other countries require data to be stored locally, everyone will. And if everyone does it, then no one benefits. The part of the economy that suffers the most are the small and medium-sized companies. And the reason it hurts them more is large multinationals, they have money. and they have resources. And whatever regulatory challenges they face, they will be able to find a way around it. But SMEs don't have those deep pockets. So what we see in TPP is a new chapter on small and medium-sized companies, and we're trying to help them take advantage of these free trade agreements. But cross-border data flow, if we do this properly, and I believe the Korus model should, when it works properly and it has reasonable security and privacy protections, but it still allows data to flow freely and be stored wherever the company thinks it's most efficient, then all of our SMEs will benefit. And that's right now. Actually, on Saturday is the actual 2-year anniversary. That is the date that the Korus cross-border data flow requirement goes into force. And we are very hopeful that things will be smooth. Our European friends, even though we finished our agreement first, they went in force 6 months before us. So they've had some challenges getting it right, and we hope that we are almost there with an understanding with Korea. But it's a very complicated topic. Every insurance companies, banks, companies like Federal Express, DHL, companies like Caterpillar. Caterpillar needs data to move freely and easily because they may have a construction project in Seoul, but the expert on that type of terrain is in Panama. They need to be able to send data very easily so that the engineer in Panama can actually calibrate the machines. The way we're doing business today is very different than the way we were even a year ago. And our governments, we have to help them understand this, which is why the U.S. Chamber has been very active with the Korus implementation, but also with TPP negotiation. We take our companies to these negotiating rounds and we brief the other countries so that they can understand why it's important. What we want is a win-win deal. The reason I believe the Korus FTA is a win-win deal, that both countries benefited, is because at the end, both countries were equally unhappy. Think about that for a minute. They're both equally unhappy. That means both countries had to give up things. To me, that says it's a balanced agreement. And in TPP, we need 12 countries to be equally unhappy.
Can you
and
give
that
us
is our hope.
what is the update on the TPP?
On TPP?
Yeah.
We're making, first of all, we're making incredible progress. We've just entered the 4th year of negotiation. We've had 19 negotiating rounds. There have been 8 ministerial meetings and 4 meetings with the leaders. 80% of the deal, we estimate, is done. On the other 20%, and this is the 20% that's really hard, the politically difficult things like intellectual property rights, like labor and environment, cross-border data flow would fall into that area. Those things have not yet been resolved, but we think we have a good idea of what they're calling landing zones. So we think we know how to get to the end. The challenge is, frankly, the U.S. relationship with Japan on market access. When Japan joined this negotiation in July, there were many skeptics. Many people said Japan would slow down the negotiation and they would lower the ambition. And the ambition for this agreement is to be a comprehensive, high-standard 21st century agreement with all products covered, and with the hope that we could get this done in a relatively quick manner, quicker than Doha, which is in year 12 and we have no agreement. Actually, Japan's chief agriculture negotiator was in Washington on Tuesday and Wednesday, meeting with our deputy USTR, Wendy Cutler. They had good meetings. They made some progress, but the Japanese are asking for 5 sacred areas of agriculture to be protected. These 5 sacred areas make up about 586 tariff lines. Now, 200 plus of those tariff lines are products they don't even export. So what the Japanese have or import, forgive me. What they've said on those 200 lines is they would be willing to give up those right away. And that's good, but it's not enough. We looked at actually the National Pork Producers Council put out a document that did an analysis of all the U.S. FTAs, the 17 we have. Actually, we have 20 now, but they looked at the 17, and there were only 30 lines that were accepted, that had exceptions. So 586 versus 30, what the Japanese are asking for is unreasonable. It's being portrayed in the media as the U.S. and Japan, but really it's the other 11 countries, particularly Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, Canada, all countries who export agriculture. We all want to see Japan open their market. And I would think my Korean friends would also like to see that.
So let's kind of move forward to sort of the future of the Korus FTA. What are some partnerships that you see emerging or bilateral partnerships or areas of growth for the Korus?
That's a great question. I think one of the ones that's most exciting to me has to do with one of President Park's initiatives about innovation. In fact, the U.S. Korea Business Council, of which I'm the president and is an affiliate of the chamber, we are launching an innovation working group in Seoul in September. And I want to give a huge thanks to our partners in Korea, the Korea-U.S. Business Council, which is housed at the Federation of Korean Industries. The new chairman, Korean Air Chairman Cho Young-ho, we have a great partnership with them, and we're very much looking forward to working together on innovation. The chairman of the U.S. side is the chairman of Qualcomm. And as you know, Qualcomm is a telecom technology innovation company and has done some very exciting things with Korean companies. And we're looking forward to seeing how we can work together to grow more business. When we bring the two business communities together, I always find it very exciting because business people know how to get things done. And again, what we're looking to do is to do more business together.
Well, thank you so much, Tami. Please give her a big round of applause. I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight's discussion. If you're not members, please sign up for membership outside. And we hope to see you back. On Monday, we have Dr. Park Jin, former parliament member and chair professor at Hankook University of Foreign Studies, here to do a luncheon discussion on Korea's foreign policy initiatives under Park Geun-hye. And then on March 27th, we have Frank Januzzi from Amnesty International here, who will be discussing the findings of the Commission of Inquiry report on North Korea and the human rights issues. So
if I could make one sales pitch for
Sure.
Park Jin. I had lunch with him yesterday. If you come, you're going to be so entertained. I asked him what he was going to say. It's fascinating. It's riveting. So please come.
Thank you so much, Tami.
Nice
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure.